coming on waves of flowers and songs of repentance. Or maybe we'll kill them, or maybe they'll kill us. And one thing's for certain, it might take forever. I know just how it feels to be on the verge of destruction. I know, just wanna reach out and touch someone. Reach out and touch someone. So tell me, my darling, so where does it hurt you? In places of interest, all songs of religion, they hide behind mountains. These people of no faith, they sing about heaven and go straight to hell. I know just how it feels to be on the verge of destruction. I know, just wanna reach out and touch someone. 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 I sing for my supper, I wish for a daughter, by dropping a few bombs, they're stopping the slaughter. So kill me with pleasure and drown me in laughter and make me a martyr of love and devotion. I know just how it feels to be on the verge of destruction. I know just how it feels to ride on the waves of emotion. I know, just wanna reach out and touch someone. Reach out and touch someone.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. We welcome you to this webinar on mental wellness at work. We were actually supposed to be meeting in person at our conference today. Unfortunately, circumstances beyond our control have meant that we have had to postpone the event to April, but we look forward to holding the conference then. A quick introduction about Working Town, if you allow me. Working Town is a company aimed at creating opportunities for businesses to discuss issues of social importance. Hence our focus right now on mental wellness at the workplace. Today we will be reproducing or replicating as best as we can two of the panels that we're supposed to have on at the conference. And with no further ado, I will share my screen and introduce you. First of all, to thank, are you seeing my screen? Just a nod maybe from the panelists, just to confirm that I am indeed sharing my screen. Thank you for that. So I first of all want to thank our partners in this project, the Richmond Foundation, the Malta Chamber, the General Workers Union, and the Malta Employees Association, who are co-organizing these webinars. This is the 6th one we've organized, and who will also be co-organizing with us the conference, which will now be held on the 5th of April. And also our sponsors, Air Malta, PKF, Sanya, EcoSpa, Thrive, DEG Healthy Living, Impact, We Connect, and the Cyberfish. I really want to thank our partners and supporters, especially with the postponement. They have been extremely supportive, and cliche as it may sound, none of this would be possible without them. So I'll move on to introduce the program for today. As I said, we are reproducing two of the panels that were intended originally for our conference. I'll shortly be introducing Désirée Steinmann, who is our panel leader, and she will take control of the session for the first discussion, which will be prioritizing employee mental wellness is the right thing to do, and it's good for business. Désirée will be joined by Jane Piper, founder of Pipsy and also the author of Focus in the Age of Distraction. Josef Bugeja, the Secretary General of the General Workers Union. Stephania Dimech, Sant, CEO at the Richmond Foundation, and Yasmin, Giorgio, CEO at Shireburn and founder at Sanya Eco Spa. Unfortunately, Josef Faruja, the Director General of the Malta Employees Association, couldn't join us, but we thank also the MEA for their support with this event. I will be copying and pasting the bios of all the panelists in the chat so that you can quietly, if you want to, look at them without us having to take up our limited time in lengthy introductions. With that, Désirée, I will pass the floor on to you so that you can take lead and of the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, and welcome panel members. I'm looking forward to our upcoming discussion. And for all the attendees, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, if there is time, put it in the chat and we're happy to accommodate them as well. So let me move right into and ask Jane Piper. Over the pandemic, mental health issues have increased, with burnout being 42% higher amongst the working women and 32% amongst the working men. What are some of the factors in the organizational culture that are contributing to this, and how could that be changed?
Thanks, Désirée. Yes, it's definitely over the pandemic times, we've seen a huge increase with relating to not just burnout, but many mental health issues. And I believe the factors which are playing into that, on one side, we've clearly got the pandemic. You know, it is a huge event. Things are just constantly changing all the time. There's a lot of anxiety about our health, our family's health, economic situation. So there's this general, shall we say, level of that. But when we look more specifically into organisations, I think there's two things that I'd really like to mention in organisations, organisational cultures, which are really contributing to the burnout. And one is something that we already know, and that's the social aspects of work. If this pandemic has brought anything home to us, is that work is more than just a place where we go and do work. It is also part of our social life. And so what we've seen over the pandemic is quite a lot more people feeling lonely and isolated because they're not having the contact with their team members and the broader organisation. So some research that was done by Microsoft was showing that basically the silos that we get in companies have got bigger. That to the start of the pandemic, the team may have bonded together more closely because they were starting to see a look into somebody's house. Here, you can have a look into my house type thing. You were starting to get that, and at the start, teams were bonding together. But then it actually became more difficult in a small team to keep that communication going. And perhaps the little tensions, you know, you weren't ever discussing them. There wasn't an occasion to do that. But the big thing they found was the silos got bigger. So while the connections stayed within that small team of maybe 6 to 10 people, broader out there, that connecting up with other people outside, you know, the casual coffee chat with somebody who's in finance when you work in HR or something like that just wasn't happening. So that's the first one I see, is really the social aspect has contributed a lot to the issues around burnout. And the second one is this always on culture, which we saw where people don't seem to have the same work-life boundaries that they previously had. And to start with in organisations, you know, you were definitely seeing that organisations were concerned about productivity, but we did see that in many companies, productivity didn't actually decline. But that, I think, was at the expense of people working longer. The time they would have spent commuting, then went into working. The time that they would have spent goofing off in the office, having a bit of a chat with their colleagues that we just talked about how important that is, has gone. And so they were just working. I was during mental health training seminars with one group, and people were saying things like, you know, it gets to 10 o'clock at night and I realize I've forgotten to stop working. You know, there were just not those boundaries there. So people were always on, they were always working. So I think it's those two things, the social aspects leading to the isolation and the always on. And I think, you know, what can we do about it was the other part of this question. Well, with the social aspects, the isolation, I think we all wish the same, but when we finally can get back together, I mean, we can have as many forced fun virtual coffees as we try to do, but really we need to find some ways that we can get back together in a safe way and actually meet up. And it's about rebuilding that team bonding again. And secondly, with those long hours, it's so important to create a culture where managers, the people who are seeing how hard those people are working and the times they are working, are really checking in with those people and checking in about their mental well-being and making sure that they are setting good boundaries.
Thank you, Jane. That was really interesting. You shone light on it from different aspects. So I would like to go straight to Stephania, because the Richmond Foundation is working together with companies and organizations since many years to support them in the mental wellness department, so to speak, of their employees. So what can the Richmond Foundation do to help companies in their mental wellness framework, and or you know, how can they contact you? What is the things that you can help them with? What could you do?
Désirée, it's a pleasure to join all of you here.
You're very quiet. Can you speak a little louder?
Yes, definitely. So thank you. It's a pleasure to join all of you here. And maybe to provide some context to your question, Désirée, mental health issues have a significant impact on the workplace and on the productivity of enterprise. I'm not sure that we are always aware of how large this impact is. Maybe if I could just mention that in the US, $1 trillion US dollars a year is estimated as the cost of mental health issues at the workplace. In the UK, 45 billion sterling per year. And in Malta, obviously a much smaller country, but still a highly significant 300 million euros per year. These are enormous amounts, and it is very important for each and every one of us, including myself as an employer, to register what that means, and therefore how important it is for us to safeguard good mental health, promote it, and take action when we understand that there are people whose mental health is starting to suffer. As you rightly pointed out, Richmond has been in this sector for 20 years. Our experience has obviously grown over the years, but the pandemic has definitely shaken us as well. And it has also pushed us to review our work and to adapt big time. We had to adapt to the work which we do, both in providing services to clients who are chronic mental health service users, but more so to corporates. Essentially, Richmond has a wide range of services to corporates, starting off from research. Do we know what our employees, how they're faring? What is the extent of their well-being or lack of their well-being? So we offer a research opportunity, which we then, basically it's an online survey, which is carried out amongst employees, the results of which are then analyzed and a report submitted with recommendations as to what issues might be presenting themselves and how we can offer services to support in that regard. So we offer training first and foremost to raise awareness among employees and also to equip management both in identifying symptoms, understanding them, and being able to react in an appropriate manner. We all know that a simple word might set a person on the right track or disrupt them and do a lot of damage. So training in that regard is very important. One of our key training programs, Mental Health First Aid, very, very popular, licensed from Australia, also provides a strategy as to how a person is to be supported and also empowered to seek professional help. Obviously, we can support, but sometimes the person who is concerned with a mental health issue needs more. So we need to also know how to encourage them to seek professional help. We also offer consultation with regards to mental health issues, even specifically in crisis situations. We have HR personnel calling us when they have people with suicidal thoughts or a meltdown at the place of work. We also support post-crisis or post-tragic incidents. So we are there on site supporting as necessary. We also have a range of psychological support for employees. So essentially emotional support and therapy, which is provided completely confidential, but which enables the individual to work on issues, thereby helping them to improve both their home life and their work life. So that is a brief overview of what we offer. One thing which I would like to invite our participants to reflect upon is the why we should do this, apart from the cost, which we mentioned and which is highly significant. But even if that doesn't urge us on enough, I was recently watching a film about a Formula One driver. And I was impressed to see that this guy, this winner, didn't just train in driving, in high speed, in becoming acquainted with his car. He trained to be fit all over. So he went to the gym, he went running, which isn't necessarily directly related to driving the car. And I wondered, mental health might not seem, although it is, but it might not seem so directly related to our employees' production, output, results. But it's so important for us to be fit all over if we're meant to deliver whatever it is. And I'm sure that with that thought, employers might understand a bit better why it's important to take care of our employees' mental health.
Yes, thank you, Stephania. And I know that a lot of companies have changed the food that they serve when they serve food internally to make it healthier. So I think the food for thought could also improve. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
So we have heard about how the company culture is really important and how there is more layers than just each individual person feeling good. We have heard about the support that they can get from the Richmond Foundation, and also how from the monetary perspective, it is an important topic for their company, even if they might not understand the emotional side of it. So Josef, may I ask you now, how aware do you think employees are of issues of mental health and what their rights are? And how does the union help them with this?
Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to, because the issue is multifaceted, but it's the same issue. And I'm going to build up on the background that Jane gave. and continue in the context of what Stephanie gave. Pre-COVID, we were obliged, and we are responsible as a trade union and social partners to be responsible for the health, safety, and well-being of the workplace, even employers, and we agree on it. But when we were talking about well-being, we were always focused on the physical well-being, not the mental. We never talked about mental. As a matter of fact, we used to go and have informal chats with the HR department, and they would ask us, can you talk to Josef? Because lately we've seen that he's not very much demotivated and his work is not very good. And it was always because either he wasn't demotivated, he's not interested anymore. Nobody, not even ourselves, attributed the thing to mental health or anxiety or stress or burnout. It needed to be very evident to be attributed to something like that. And it was one-off. The pandemic changed the world of work. When we used to argue as trade unions that we need to go teleworking, and employers, especially in the private sector, were those who have a very rigid structure, didn't want to cooperate. And they said, no, we need employees over here. But the pandemic changed all that. And if there was, or if there is any silver lining to the pandemic, was the awareness of mental health, first aiders, and well-being. Before all this, I do recommend to all the participants to do the mental health awareness course that Richmond give, because I'm a mental health first aider. Not because I can handle it, but at least I can see the signs, and then I can advise to take professional action, to seek professional action. So as a trade union, in the collective agreements, we agree with employers, and this is never discussed because there is total agreement about it, that we need to provide to the employees and our members health, safety, and well-being at the workplace. But going practically now, it is much more than that. And the issues that we were discussing, for example, the right to disconnect, we discussed this before the pandemic, we thought it was going to be an extra benefit because it's always on, the advance in technology. Now it is a need, and everyone is believing in it, because if the employees stay connected, the expense, just the expense, because you burned out, is much more than that, apart from, and we believe that in Malta, human resources are the talent that we really need. So nobody wants to lose someone because of a burnout or an anxiety or extra stress. So everyone is believing that the way forward is that we need to tackle more the mental health well-being. And it's not just talking or just a clause in the collective agreement. We need to embrace this change. We need to talk about it. The more we talk about it, it is better. So now it's on the national agenda. More people are speaking out. You mentioned a lot of statistics. I do believe those statistics, but I put them in a little bit in inverted commas, because other people are still scared to speak out because they would be perceived as weak. Mm-hmm. But we are going out of that culture. We are starting to talk about it. So now we have an obligation, as everyone, expertise, social partners, authorities, that we start implementing a national health and mental well-being policy. There is already a mental health commissioner, so we need to work together. And we did sign a memorandum of understanding between employers, Richmond Foundation, trade unions, the Commissioner for Mental Health, that we work toward this goal, that we put this not just on the agenda, but we practice it. And apart from that, something that I really, really like to do in every workplace, and we did suggest this as a budget measure, but it wasn't introduced. Right now, in every workplace, large ones, there need to be a first aider. It's by law. I believe there should be also a mental health first aider, like any other else. We do have say health and safety officers. So why not the mental health first aider? The more we have a well-balanced and healthy workforce, the more productivity is. But in the current scenario that we are still learning, everyone, even myself, I was all in favor of teleworking. Now I believe it needs to be a hybrid system, because we learned through that, through the pandemic and what's happened. We learned that a lot of more people are speaking about domestic violence. But the parameters between the private life or the family life and the working life became so much blurred that we don't know exactly what is working life and what is our family life. So we need to do a demarcation line between the two. The right to disconnect will help. The right not to, for example, as employers, to contact the employees. The employees turn the switch off, because sometimes it's even employees that, but listen, at 10 o'clock, our children are sleeping, so it's better that I'm there. No, but it's not the right time to work. And putting all this together, I think there is the will. It's not just locally, even at European Trade Union Confederation, we were talking about the mental health well-being of all the workforce in Europe now. And there is stress, and there is the right to disconnect. And people are questioning not just trade union officials, even employers, because it's harming their productivity. We need to put boundaries. We need to put a very strong legislation to protect without affecting the efficiency. I read the statistics. Most of the companies, their productivity increased. And in Malta, 46% of the employees were contacted. During the pandemic, increased their working time to either 44 hours, a normal working week, or 46. Because they were contacted, for example, 10 minutes before finishing time. And they were asked to do something. And they would say, yes, of course, there's still 10 minutes. And it would take them another quarter of about half an hour. But since they were not actually moving out of the office, they would say, oh, it's okay, this would take me another half an hour, and then I can continue to do something else. So putting all this, we need to focus what we know right now, take all the expertise that we can get from the Richmond foundations and other authorities, and focus on our workplaces. Because we believe in this. Now we need to embrace this change, because it will help individually and it will help everyone, even ourselves as trade unionists. We do see counseling, we talk, because all the problems we faced during the pandemic, it was even affecting us. And we had to talk to someone, because you start losing even your faith in the job you're doing, because the scenario is changing every time. And the most thing that affected everyone, all workers, was the unknown. What is going to happen tomorrow? How long this will take? And when you start seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, there is an advert or there is a news flash, they found a new variant. Mm-hmm. And we're back to square one.
Thank you, Joseph. That was really interesting from your perspective. I just saw that a question came in from the audience for you, Stephania. And the question was how the figures for the costs of mental health to enterprise were calculated. Do you know how they were calculated?
I can give you the links where it wasn't me calculating them. The one for the UK is from Deloitte. I can put on the link to the document. And the one for Malta is from Mind Matters. I'll get you the exact reference for the one for the US. And
we can put it into the chat.
Yes, I'll upload them in the chat.
Great, thank you so much, Stephania. So we will cover this question with the answers on the chat. Yasmin, you are really running two companies. You founded a company in the wellness area and ran it as an entrepreneur, and now you were also appointed CEO for a very technical company. And this is sort of like really the two worlds coming together. So I'm really interested to hear what do you observe having one foot in each of those companies, and what can we learn from you?
Thank you, Désirée. I think as my fellow panelists were speaking, it just brought me to this thought that very often we consider mental health as very acute conditions. And really and truly, the things that happen before that end in a mental health crisis, we haven't historically paid a lot of attention to them in the workplace. My background, even before I started Sanya, I always had this question of sort of, isn't the best way to productivity for people to be happy at work? But that's quite a hard question to answer. Like, okay, how do we make people happy? How do we create a workspace which actually brings out sort of a positive fulfillment from our work? Because the reality is that many mental health problems actually start at work, that people are in a toxic work environment, or they feel unsupported, or they feel overlooked. There's a lot of mental stress which comes from the workplace. And at least if the workplace is not a solution, which it also can be, at least it shouldn't be the cause of a lot of stress. And as Stephania said, there is a cost to not doing that, but it's even actually beyond that, because as I said, happy employees are the most productive, and happy employees make the best companies. But I think we have to engage a bit deeper with this topic of how can a workplace really help people's mental health? How can the workplace bring the best out of us? Until very recently, our methods were quite primitive, I feel. I always joke about the sort of fruit basket at the workplace, which is great to have fruit, but really our needs as human beings are so much more complex. If only it could be solved by having a banana in your lunch break. I think for me, obviously, my time in Shireburn has really taught me that actually all companies are just made up of human beings, and all human beings have the same wants and needs. But I think sometimes when we enter the corporate world, we sort of come up with these assumptions. We upheld ways of doing things that we feel this is the corporate world, so I have to conform to this. And when in reality, I think we need to be a bit braver as leaders, as CEOs, as COOs, as HR professionals to actually say, no, we do need to create a culture that actually brings out the best in people and actually can help people realize their dreams, even find, the fulfillment and the praise that maybe they haven't had in their life. How is a big question, right? And I'm a very big fan of leadership training, because as the famous saying goes, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And I believe that if we're really going to take mental health seriously, we really need to make a big effort in training our leaders. Things like the mental health first aid course that Richmond do sounds amazing, but even sort of beyond that, not just from a mental health issue of we have a crisis, but even in no time of crisis, how can we create a workspace where there's good communication, where people aren't blaming each other, where people are humble? Because ultimately, these are the things that really create a workplace which doesn't add to our mental health problems. My journey as CEO of Shireburn has been really interesting, because before I took the role, a lot of people said, oh, it's so different from your business. You're going from, a spa and a wellness center into, a very technological industry. People aren't going to be as open to your ideas. And actually just yesterday, we've been doing a series of strategy days where I took small teams and brought them to Sanya for a strategy day. And we started each session with an icebreaker, which actually got people connecting and sharing gratitude. And in yesterday's session, I decided, I had a meeting after and I was running tight on time, so I'm going to scrap the icebreaker for today because I need to keep the session a bit shorter. And I walked into the room and I said, okay, guys, we're not going to do the icebreaker today. And as soon as I said it, they just went, oh, what? And then I realized that they were actually standing in the position where we usually do the icebreaker, ready, for the icebreaker. So again, I think we need to be a bit braver and push our comfort zone in the kind of things, we're willing to do in the workplace, because this exercise ended up with people pairing up and sharing what they were grateful for 2 minutes, which in the beginning you'd think, people like me as a CEO, they're going to take me seriously if I do this kind of exercise. Do people want to do this? Maybe they don't want. But I've found that actually there's a lot of tools that we can use in the workplace which make workplaces a lot happier and actually equip people with the right skills to be part of a culture that is going to be good for our mental health.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. So I would like, now I'm split between two questions I want to ask. I asked Jane first. Very brief, from your book, you have spent a lot of time thinking about the how you can lose focus in a time of distraction. Can you give us a few tools that you can help everybody that's listening in right now to maybe take one step further into their own mental health?
I think, because I talked about the boundaries, and I think a really simple way is to try and set some boundaries for yourself. And I like to say the boundaries can be about place, space, and pace. Having a place where you work, so even if you don't have your own office at home, but you have the same place where you work, creates a boundary when you're working at home, from work from home. Having time boundaries, so having that that time that you spent within it, and thinking about the pace, because those times that we used to have, which were like a commute, they actually helped us switch off. So I think about the boundaries between your work and your non-work life, and creating those boundaries in this pandemic time when many people are having to work to home, or it seems like we're going to be returning to work to home. Perhaps the situation's slightly better in Malta. I was very jealous of hearing that Yasmin was actually having face-to-face meetings with her staff. So yeah, I think those are the important things to think about over this time.
Thank you so much. Now, Stephania, through your work, you get a really good view into the middle managers. You know, they're often pulled in two directions. There is the expectation from above. They see the people below them and what's going on there. So what would be your thoughts or your comments for middle management on how to deal with their position in between?
I think that's an excellent question, and it is, middle management is probably the grade from which we get most requests for help, because the tension there is definitely felt, and it has been very much an issue during the pandemic, because they were more of a sandwich experience at that time. Specific group dynamic session is something which we find very helpful, both ourselves, because what we promote, we provide for our own employees. So a regular group dynamic session where people share the challenges, share the successes, share hints, and also discuss issues which are burdening them and map out ways how they can be better supported. Having such sessions with an external professional is extremely helpful, because people, even if they are at different grades within the organizations, during the group dynamic session, they are at par. So they are all members in the team, and they are being led, they are following a session which is being facilitated by an external. So the relationships are very much more on an equal level, and people feel more comfortable sharing. We have discovered that this really works wonders in supporting middle managers to then be able to negotiate better and represent their employees better with the organization, and vice versa, represent the organization better and in a more confident manner, although in a respectful and understanding method, with the employees. And that makes things a bit more easier. One other thing maybe which I wanted to mention, and which Josef referred to, is a mental health policy. If an organization has a mental health policy, which is obviously made public to all the members, to all the employees, the message that this is a safe space where issues can be discussed without fear of retribution or prejudice or anything of the sort, creates the ambience to have people open up and to have issues brought forward and therefore dealt with and tackled. So I think those two aspects would provide a better environment to work together better.
Thank you so much, Stephania. I just saw there was one more comment. Mark, do we still have time for that one?
Unfortunately, not much time. Jim Parkhill is asking a question for a number of panelists.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. So there's a question. Having managed a sprinting ME for 18 years, I implemented mental health awareness many years ago with emphasis on breaking down the taboo surrounding mental health. The most positive results came from employing people that were transitioning from mental ill health to wanting to go back to employment. I instigated a buddy pairing scheme and found that within days, mental health was no longer taboo, but was discussed opening. Directed at Josef and Yasmin in particular, has anything similar been implemented in Malta? Is the question.
A quick reply from each of you, please, so that we can move on. Sorry for being, thank you.
Josef, you're muted.
Yes, as I said, before mental health was perceived, if you talk about it, that you were weak and you were broken. So nobody talked about it. Now it is more open and it is more discussed, and collective agreement, although we always had a clause about it, now it's being implemented properly. We talk about it, we do conferences, we do speeches. Even us as a Workers' Union, for our members, we have a policy about mental health, and we discussed it with our members and how they should tackle cases and to target people, to help people, and who to make reference to. So we just practice what we preach.
Thank you, Josef. Anything to add from you, Yasmin? As he
just something very, very short. I think these kind of policies are very good, but I think in the ideal, these things happen naturally. When colleagues have compassion for each other, they don't need a buddy scheme, to look out for one another. And I think this is why, these conversations and the conversation about creating safe spaces and cultures which actually allow people to bring their authentic self into the workplace, actually allow them to express a more holistic version of themselves at the workplace, actually results in these things being done naturally by people, as it's human nature to care for each other at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. That was, I think, a wonderful last sentence for our panel. I thank you all for participating and adding all your wealth of knowledge to this. And I hand over to Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Désirée, and all of you so much, even for sticking to the time. And I'm going to immediately move on to welcome Dara Meubrink from Thrive Malta, who is going to take us through a brief Energiser in between our panels. So we can, well, I'll leave it up to Dara.
Thank you, Mark. I hope you can hear me well, yes?
Yes.
Amazing. Hey, thank you. It was beautiful listening to you all. So I am Dara and I'm from Thrive. And along with Sanya, we offer programs called Wellness in the Workplace, where we help companies incorporate well-being practices into their workplace. So just what we've spoken about, or what you've heard the wonderful panelists speak about, I want to bring a little bit more in an embodied form to you. And I have only 10 minutes to kind of give you what they've given me as an energizer. So what does that mean? What I'm really here to do is to remind you that you are alive. We've heard that it's very important in company culture to feel connected in a team. But before we can feel connected in a team, we need to feel connected to ourselves. So I'm here today to remind you where you can connect your mind with your body, because the mental space can be a dangerous space when you haven't connected it deeply to your body. So let's start with just a little exercise where you start rubbing your hands together like that, really fast. Maybe you feel like, whoa, what's that? Yes, just start rubbing your hands. It's a strange way to do, but you rub your hands like this, really with quite some pressure against each other. And you feel maybe some warmth appearing in between your hands. Maybe you can open your fingers like that and also activate in between your fingers. Why do we do that? Because your hands are incredible points of energy, right? You reach out with your hands to the world, do like that in between the fingers. Really keep rubbing. You might feel a little bit tired. Your arms might feel a little strange, but just keep rubbing, keep rubbing. You can do it. A little more, little more, little more, little more. I'm going to count down from 10 and you're just going to keep rubbing. Don't skip this one because your mental health depends on your well-being in your body too. So you want to activate 10, 9, go a bit faster, 8, a bit faster, 7, a bit faster, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just release, relax your hands, maybe feel your arms feeling a bit alive. Maybe you want to stand up for this instead of just sitting down, because you might have heard the saying, sitting is the new smoking. One of the biggest threats to your physical health is sitting all day long. And a lot of people have jobs where they just sit. So take your hands. I want to make sure that you actually listen to me. And put 4 fingers behind your ears. And with your thumbs, stroke out from the middle to the outside and go really round all of your ears. Why would anybody massage their ears? Well, even though this is weird, but we just spoken about this idea that we need to be a bit more brave, right? We need to do some things different, and your body belongs to your mind. Your body is not just here to carry your head around. Your body is here to yes, and just take the headphones off. If you can't do this for a moment, you can just enjoy massaging your ears, because your whole body is inside your ear. If you have ever received something called acupuncture, you can do it in your ear and you can reach any organ, any part of your body in your ear. It's amazing. So really massage it with pressure. See that they get hot, that they get warm, that you can feel your ears coming alive. So, and when you're feeling them really nice and hot, then you know that this, massaging your ears, is one of the greatest tricks to sharpen your focus. Now just feel your ears. Just let them go, let your hands go, and just feel how hot they are and how much more you can maybe listen. How much focus is just happening inside your being. And then take one hand, put it on your forehead, and another one. These are kinesis and exercises. You put the other hand right behind, resting on your forehead or on your forehead, and just hold them there. As if you're holding your head, as if you're holding all the weight, all the decisions that you need to make, all the things that you don't have control over. You're holding them for your mind for a little moment. Maybe close your eyes and feel how beautiful that feels to be held. And then switch hands. And again, just be here for your body, for your mind. Signal your body and your mind that you are one. That you're indeed not just a mind, but that you're a body-mind that's walking around. So this is a very good exercise to do when you have a lot of decisions to make, or when you're not feeling quite sure, to ground yourself in for a moment, just holding yourself. So much, and then release your hands and just relax and just feel the effects of that for a moment. So much of our day-to-day, of our well-being in the day-to-day has to do with how we function within our body and how much we activate it once in a while. So it's important that maybe you get up every once in a while from your workplace, you move your body just a little bit is already enough to create the sense of aliveness within you, because you are a human body and this human body is designed to move. And I want to give you one more exercise, maybe two, let's see how far we go, that have to do with breath, because the other thing next to movement that is also signifying aliveness is your breath and the way you use your breath. Most people don't use their breath in any real way consciously. So we breathe very shallowly, just a little bit up here, and then we feel very contracted by that, because we constantly don't use the full capacity of our lungs. So today I want to give you the rule of thumb. Whenever you feel anxious, whenever you feel you've got too much on your plate, it's a lot of stuff going on, use this breath technique to calm your nervous system. It's called the 4-7-8 breath, which veterans from war veterans use in order to get over their PC and over their mental health problems. So this one means you inhale for four counts, hold your breath for 7, and then exhale for 8. And why is this so good? Because whenever you exhale longer than you inhale, you're going to soften and relax your nervous system, because it's like a message to your autonomous nervous system saying, hey, you can relax now. There's nothing fearful around you. And when we're not contracted in fear, when we're not so much in resistance to what's going on, we will open our mind. We will be more able to solve problems. We have more creative impulses. So let's just do this. Inhale for 4. Through the nose, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then exhale, hold for 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then exhale very slowly for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4. Take a big breath. 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All the way out. And then big inhale in again. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Return to normal breathing. Just feel what that does to your system. If you allow your whole body to breathe really deeply, if you allow your whole body to, your whole lungs to actually take in air and exhale it slowly. So the rule of thumb, whenever you feel anxious, whenever you feel overwhelmed, is to exhale longer than you inhale. It's a very, very simple trick, but it does wonders. If you do this practice, for example, the 4-7-8 practice, just for a couple of minutes, in those moments, you will immediately feel the effect of calm inside your body. So I think that was it already almost for me. I have another one for you, but I'm also happy to just stay with this.
There's no more time, unfortunately. Dara, thank you so much for that. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you.
Use your breath, use your emotions, use your body, because your mental health depends on it.
I switched on my camera for a few seconds to prove to you that I was actually rubbing
I saw that. You were a very good student.
Thank you very much, Dara.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
And thank you so much.
Ciao.
Thanks again. So in the meantime, thank you everyone again for that. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to share my screen again briefly. And I'm trying to bring George Manjon on, who is the leader of our next panel. But for some reason, I'm not succeeding. So, George, I'm going to try again. If you can hear me. If not, I will take control of the panel myself, if that's okay with everyone. So I'll welcome the second panel now, as we wait for George to join, but I'll lead myself for now.
Hello.
Hey, there you are, George. Okay, thank you, George, for joining. So I will introduce Giorgio, who is a senior partner and head of audit at PKF Malta. Thank you, George. He's joined on this panel by Catherine Calleja, chairperson of Malta, the Malta Chamber's Health and Wellness Committee. Derek Dick, also known as Fish, singer-songwriter. Dr. Matthew Rinkrat, who is a partner at Ganado Advocates, an HR lawyer. And Dr. Rachel Sasha Taylor-East, who is a psychiatrist. And finally, Robin Pratt, who is the founder of Impact Consulting. George, I'll leave the floor to you to take control of this panel. And wait just a second. I forgot to show you these slides before with everyone's lovely picture. There you go. And I will leave the floor to you so that you can take control of the panel, George. And if there are any questions from the audience, I will be sending them on to you. Thank you so much.
So hello, and thank you for joining us. I am very much sort of impressed on the panel choice of the panel members, and I hope I will do justice by the questions that I place in their direction. Mark has very nicely prepared some questions for you so that we don't go one on top of each other. Unfortunately, being the second session, most of the good stuff is already being spoken about COVID. So they stole our thunder. So you feel as if you wanted to say this, you know, I participated, or I heard all through the first session, and there were fantastic speakers, you know, people from Richmond Foundation. I don't want to single anybody, but you know, the Richmond Foundation is the one who gives us all the right answers, because they are actually hands in, you know, on the pulse of the, shall we say, the problem. I occasionally have to use my glasses if I read the question, and I've been directed to ask a main question so that there would be a certain harmony between the panelists. And the first one is directed to Catherine Calleja, who is the chairperson, Health and Wellness Committee, Chamber of Commerce. My goodness, you know, quite a long title. And my main question to you, Catherine, coming, as we said, after hearing the first session, explain all the corners of problems of COVID and the varying impacts of it. The question that I've been suggested to ask you is, as the Chamber represents a wide cross-section of business sectors, how have these sectors been impacted differently by the pandemic? And was the assistance available, in your opinion, and in the opinion of the Chamber, directed according to focus on the worst hit sectors? In other words, did the babies that cried got immediate attentions? The babies in the cot who were silent and prudent, did they get attention, in your opinion? Please let us know.
Thanks, George. This is quite a tall order to answer this question in 3 minutes.
This is a fantastically tall order.
I've tried to.
But you are lucky, as we all are, the 5 of us, because if you've been on the first session, maybe you were not, but if you were, all the answers were given then. Of course,
well, I'm looking at it more from a
not from the Chamber's
macro.
point of
I'm
view.
looking at it from a macro point of view, and I think we can divide the impact of the pandemic into 2 main channels and 2 main time periods. I think there were the people who were affected by the immediate fallout and the associated restrictions arising from the contracted demand from an economic point of view. And secondly, I won't say interestingly enough, but there seems to be a second channel now where we've had acute strains arising from the economic recovery, where we had bottling global capacity and logistical bottlenecks. This was also coupled with an energy crisis and overarching inflation today. So I think these are the different, I mean, I'm not talking about the health side over here, I'm talking about the effects on the different sectors. So at first, George, I think you said the immediate people who were affected were the obvious ones: retail, tourism, HoReCa, hotels and restaurants, as well as arts and entertainment and aviation sectors, who people sometimes, especially the arts and entertainment, are forgotten. Many of these sectors were literally shut down. So you can imagine the effects economically and on people's state of mind during that period. In fact, the amount of tourists dropped from 2.8 million in 2019 to 0.7 million in 2020. So that's pretty significant, and the effects on people's jobs and livelihoods and well-being was obviously also significant. Other areas that were not closed down but had significant dramatic decreases in income were advertising and journalism. Businesses held back on spending money in these areas, and there was significant concern in those sectors. The real GDP drop of about 9% was partially offset by government stimulus measures. And this is the second part of the question, George. This was mainly the wage supplements and voucher schemes, which addressed these sectors, which were these were mainly targeted, though, to the sectors which were shut down. So this was the immediate panacea to that first wave or first channel. The wage supplement scheme supported sectors in a quasi-prorated manner as to how badly their operations were hit. And then there were other government sort of concerted efforts, interest rate subsidies, Malta Development Bank guarantee schemes, and credit institutions were also directed to provide 6 months moratoria to those who could show their suffering. So there was immediate attention to that immediate first group. However, now we're starting to see the more derived demand effects. With the economic rebound, cracks have begun to appear in the global supply chain, and inflation has affected several industries severely, especially those involved in logistics and manufacturing. Importers and exporters and those involved in shipping and bunkering sectors are being severely strained by skyrocketing costs and reduced shipping traffic. The longer-term impact in these sections and the retail sector may cause another economic contraction, especially if this coincides with further restrictions or shutdowns, which everyone is afraid of. So it's interesting that you sort of highlighted this thing. I mean, we did have a massive reaction to the people who are shut down, but now we're starting to see other sectors who are not the obvious sectors being impacted by inflation and logistics costs.
Well, thank you very much. That was quite a mouthful, so to speak, given the fact that Chamber represents originally the importers and wholesalers, but since they joined the FOI many years ago on the line, there is also the manufacturing, and to some extent you also go to services like insurance and obviously the hotels, the service, etc. And one of the, shall we say, comment that was heard towards the wage supplement was that government was saying, oh, we paid everybody who needed the money and we saved 100,000 jobs. However, at the same time, when the tide was flowing out, we saw that a lot of people were not fully clothed. In essence, Warren Beatty said, a famous quote. We found after the first or second wave that there is now a scarcity of workers. So, which seems to be incongruous. If you have saved half the population, working population, our working population is about 250 to 160,000. 60,000 of which work for the services, for the public service, which obviously were paid in full, and 200,000 roughly is the private sector, which the Chamber of Commerce represent. So half of them, 100,000, according to the budget, 22, were saved from getting the job, so to speak. Okay. At the same time, COVID has resulted in many factors. One of them is the scarcity of workers. So isn't that also creating the scarcity of workers, creating a mental strain a big mental strain on employers, members of the chamber. Have you got any comments in that direction?
Not only on employers, but also co-workers, because we're talking about mental stress and strain, and there is an issue. I mean, I met several insurers yesterday evening. There is definitely a lot of pressure on wages. This inflationary pressure is affecting all of us. There's also increased employment in the public service, and this is, I think this is something which many constituted bodies have drawn attention to. We have to be careful to leave talent in the private sector as much as possible. I'm not saying that public service doesn't need talent, but let's try and let the economy develop as it should. We also mustn't forget that we had a lot of people who left Malta during the pandemic. So people did leave, especially in the hospitality area. There was a lot of people who left the island. So, you know, this is a combination of different factors. There's not one answer to this.
Very good. And Derek Dick, Aka Fish, it's your turn now. You very much remind me of the singer who spoke about, or he sang about, Unchain My Heart, which was Joe Cocker, so to speak. He passed away, God bless his soul, and you and I are still, you know, entertaining people here. And so tell us a bit about the effect that, in your opinion, COVID, the varying effect that COVID had on a number of performers, both in the culture and the arts, apart from singers as well, and those who usually organize entertaining events, which obviously for the last 18 months had to be scaled down drastically, apart of course from the controversial aspect of rave parties, which the summer of last year for a few months were allowed and then stopped abruptly. What is your opinion on the impact of COVID on the performance and entertaining sector?
It's been absolutely hellish. I mean, I think the arts and entertainment industry, I mean, I can only speak really principally from the music industry. I'm an independent artist. I'm not signed to a major label. I run my own business, my own record company, which is just, I'm the only artist. And luckily, I have a mail order operation that kept me alive. But in March 2020, we had just started and we played our first show in Aberdeen, in Scotland. And we knew that COVID was coming in. We knew there were going to be problems. And within 24 hours of playing our first show, we were staring at the cancellation of an entire UK tour. Then I lost my European tour very soon after. And we sat through the first lockdown with no help from the government at all. I think the problem that we have, and I'm speaking principally as I am a singer and a musician, speaking from the music industry perspective, but I know, as I said, I've got actor friends, people who work in movies had the same problem, that we didn't get furlough. A lot of us are not employed by companies. We survive on our own. It's a very insecure industry. We are very insecure people. We always live with uncertainties. But with COVID, we were basically cut adrift and we were deemed as being unimportant. We weren't discussed in the same way as the hotel industry, you know, the travel industry. And as I said, we had no income. We couldn't work. And from a mental health perspective, you know, we were in a situation where we were taken from being people who worked within units, with audiences, within circuses of people, and we were taken away from that and placed on our own, right? And that amplified a lot of the insecurities and a lot of mental health issues that a lot of people had. And I know that from talking to a lot of people, because there was no support network. There were no counsellors. We had to deal with it all ourselves. Meanwhile, the government cut us adrift. And we didn't know what was happening, and we couldn't go out and perform. We were finding we couldn't We didn't have the interaction with people. We couldn't live off the energies. We were on Zoom calls all the time. And it was a horrendous time, and it still remains so, because even now we are in a situation where we cannot go out on tour. With Omicron coming in, we cannot go out on tour with any degree of certainty because we have no insurance. If a lead musician goes down, how do we replace them? If lead technicians go down, how do we replace them? And on top of all of that, in the UK in particular, we have to deal with Brexit. And we're dealing with Brexit and COVID simultaneously. And for any creative artists that work internationally, living in the United Kingdom, dealing with both of these huge effects on us is crippling, right? And COVID has been a disaster area for the music industry. To be unable to perform, to deal with people. I mean, from a financial level, it's horrendous. From a mental health level, for artists, it's been, you know, to be condemned by the government, to be ignored. I think that hurt a lot more than anything else. So I'll hand it back.
So tell me, what are your views in the film industry, for example? We all, to some extent, can mention one or two blockbusters. The 007 film, the film which has been shot before the onset of COVID and was put into the deep freeze, so to speak, and then after 1.5 years it was released, and when you and I and others saw it, there was a certain disconnect. It seems like it was filmed and produced under a different area that we are living now. You know, you will see that some of the scenes would not have been able to be reproduced now because of the COVID restrictions, etc. So that is also damaging the quality of performers' work. That is damaging and reducing, impacting on the box office return, shall we speak. Have you got any comments on that?
I don't know about that. I mean, I admit that I find it strange watching films and watching movies that were made pre-COVID and watching the element of physical contact. It is very strange, and there is a certain disconnect. You know, in the same ways with smoking. You know, when we live in a generation that doesn't smoke now, and to see people smoking on a film screen is strange. But you know, my future son-in-law works in the movie industry, and he had to deal with, you know, the whole breakdown of sets, as I'm sure it had a huge impact on Malta because you're so used to hosting film sets, you know, and that has been. But again, let's strip it back to the people that are involved rather than the companies that are producing the films. The people that are making these movies, you know, the people that are working on film sets, the sound technicians have all been in the same boat where they've been ignored. And I think that has had, you know, and also in the UK, we had Michael Gove, one of the UK government ministers, who had the audacity to turn around and say to the creatives, right? Creatives, the people that weren't working, he said, you should maybe retrain. You should retrain. How can you turn around and say to somebody who's doing a job because they love it, because they were born to it, the passion they put into it, to turn around to them and say retrain is an insult. And that's why a lot of the creative industry feel like that.
I lit your fuse, Mr. Fish. Yeah. I saw mentioned the Dara. If we can, for a while now, go through the Dr. Matthew Brinkat, who is a partner in Canada and Associates, one of the leading law firms, and he specializes on HR. So one of the obvious questions is, what legal protections would in Malta are practically available? Because I mean, in the books and laws, there must be dozens and dozens of regulations to protect. But in reality, what can an employee sue or feel that he can be protected, he or she can be protected in the environment of work? I know this is a loaded question, and obviously it depends whether somebody is working in a factory or in an office and a different environment. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, George. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Okay, I think
it's cutting very clear from my side. What about you, Mr. Fish? Can you hear him?
Yeah, can you
Yes,
find
hearing you
Perfect,
fine.
perfect.
And
And
you,
any
Matthew?
others?
Hearing you
Okay,
fine,
go ahead.
Matthew.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. No, George, look, I mean, in this context, okay, the law is an ass, full stop. And I tell you why. The law is an ass because it only caters for situations when people would have suffered. And it says, okay, since you've suffered, here's some money. And effectively, they would actually expect people to be happy with money at that point. So again, the legal remedies do exist. I can quote the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the implied conditions of any contract of employment. But effectively, I think the system needs to change. The remedies need to change. And this is very much linked to what the previous panel said before us. I mean, it's not really what an employee can do, because an employee in the game, I would think, is most definitely the weakest of the links. And so effectively, yes, employees have remedies. They can contact the lawyer and open lawsuits and get compensation at this. But that's not a solution. You know, if you speak to people like Sasha later on, I mean, she'll tell you that people need support. And therefore, I strongly feel that employers should be doing more. For example, over here at our firm, we have all sorts of initiatives. But one of the things which we've been doing is actually opening up and actively seeking out people who have issues and actually coaching them. Because mental issues, as people mentioned before, are the end of a chain. So if we're faced with situations where people have problems which they can't overcome, then that's too late. I recall actually seeing a documentary of Barcelona and the Juventus football club, where on a regular basis, players who obviously compete at a very high level were actually given compulsory psychotherapy sessions. Why? Because you have to learn to cope with your mind. Once your mind is overloaded, and then it's late, then you have to go to people like Rachel. But effectively, I think that employers need to do much more on an internal organizational initiative levels with people like Richmond and other people, to effectively come up with solutions to make sure that the employees are happier. Getting employees to be absolutely, certifiably no problem clean is obviously going to be difficult. But I think that we have to come across the situation that people are going to face difficulties, and then life is full of ups and downs. So how to deal with the downs is obviously crucial. Now, from a legal perspective, the law doesn't and cannot give us solutions. If we force two people in a room, like a lawsuit does, then the outcome is simply just aggravation. Or do I have to do this? For example, Josef mentioned having a compulsory system of the workplace safety officer, or the person who is like a first aider when it comes to mental issues. Yes, it's fine, but having it compulsory doesn't work. I mean, we need to actually know why we're doing it and feeling the results of our own efforts. When I want to start playing football, if my coach, when I was young, told me, whatever you do, you have to play football, I would take it as if, why should I do it? But the fact that I'm enjoying it and I'm understanding the fruits of my efforts is obviously something different. And that's where you put in the effort, when you actually know what you're doing, actually gives you results. So from a legal perspective, I think the law is very secondary here, George. We have to leave it aside, focus on changing our culture and our mindset, because when the law hits you, and then it's either too late, you have to start going to lawyers to basically defend your case. At the end of the day, it's going to just, not resolve your issue. Human capital is what we're working with. If we don't protect that, then there's no future for us. That's the bottom line.
Very good. On the very much topic of human capital, I would like to put a teaser in your direction. Now, Catherine from Chamber of Commerce informed us that the logical question is that being a very small pool of workers here, 250,000 plus or minus, and there are rumors, perhaps not proven, that the government tends to pinch and recruit from the private sector to the detriment of the private sector. On the other hand, workers tend to love the working conditions of the public sectors, because there is definitely number one, and this is coming from
I didn't quite say that, George, but I'll
Well, if I don't create controversy, Mark will not send me any hampers for Christmas.
I think the Chamber issued a press release warning against increased public sector employment in the upcoming period to the elections. So I'll just set that.
So steering controversy is my calling card, so to speak. So carry on my question to Matthew. There is, shall we say, a dichotomy here. We have a situation for the last 18 months, some of the firms, not all of them, okay, locally working for the local, and those of them particularly from hospitality and say teaching English, had zero income, okay. Now government was doing a wage supplement, and for all its worth, they said, officially, they saved 100,000 workers. From jobs, from being queuing up in the dole queue. On the other hand, there is a massive shortage of workers. So an employer is faced with two dilemmas. One, short of revenue, okay? And secondly, when the tide goes down, the workers are not available. Isn't that in itself very stressful, that for the worker, for the employer themselves, being shorn of money, they still have to put aside some money for taking care of their mental well-being. Mental well-being, as Josef from the General Workers Union pointed out, comes in with its cost. This is something is not covered by the social welfare, as far as I know. What are your comments in this direction? This is like a tug of war, really. One side, from the human side, from the HR, saying, give them all the support, the mental support, Richmond Foundation and all that. Even Richmond Foundation needs to be funded, you know, and I'm sure it is. So what is your practical answer to this dichotomy?
George, I mean, I would agree to the fact that obviously these things need more funding and more input. And effectively, I would say that employers cannot discard and say, but just focus on a wage supplement, when in reality, as you're saying, you either don't find people or people aren't actually performing. So ultimately, this is the investment to make if you want to move forward. If you have people who are not working happily, as Josef described before, and then that is an issue, and people are going to get fed up. If I'm doing the same thing day in, day out, I'm sure even people in my profession who face different problems from different people every day will get fed up at a point. And so we have to pay attention to focus on ourselves, on self-awareness, on our purpose. At the same time, though, companies need to invest in the well-being of their employees. And with that, I'll actually move on to Sasha, because I think it's a bit late.
Yes. Now, Rachel, Sasha Taylor-Rees, you may be our salvation here, because being so a consultant psychiatrist, you may wish to tell us what are the issues and what are the solutions going forward to the problems you already heard in the first session and of course this one.
Sure, thank you. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you as well to Mark, because I think this series of webinars have really been a bit of a marathon, and really I think you've been successful in driving home some really clear messages about the importance of mental health. So I'd really like to thank you for that, Mark, and everyone at Working Towns. So what have been the main issues that we have seen here on the ground? I work in the mental health services, or local mental health services, as a psychiatrist, and I also lead a team. So, you know, I saw with firsthand how the rates of anxiety and depression doubled. This was actually reported that the rates of anxiety and depression doubled at the times of crisis, so sort of in a response to fear, an immediate response to fear and to the lockdowns. And this we saw locally too. I think Richmond had a very clear report as well on how much people were calling in on their helplines. and that we saw on the ground as well, and also with the members of my team. I think that COVID really sort of brought to a wider consciousness the inequalities in areas, you know, in healthcare, in technology, access to green spaces. And I think that this is where persons with mental illness were really sort of suffered even more. Persons with mental illness are more at risk of job loss, have more issues with income instability. And we saw this as well, you know, persons who were already vulnerable, who already had mental health issues, had a greater impact during the pandemic. And I think this is where I think Yasmin mentioned in the previous panel about us being human and really understanding the people we work with is really important, to be more sensitive to the people who might be at higher risk. What we saw on the ground and also has been documented throughout Europe is an increased rate of alcohol use and domestic violence. I certainly saw this in my area of work. And what we also saw is that persons with mental illness are also at higher risk of COVID infection and also having complications from COVID. So we're still dealing with this and the loss that our persons who already had mental health issues and now are compounded by issues from COVID. So when I really think sort of back on the last couple of years, and where I stand as a healthcare provider, I really reflect on sort of the access to healthcare, you know, how readily available have we been, considering also how overburdened our health services have also been, and the mental health as well of the frontliners and other healthcare providers. But a positive, I think, from all of in our experience has been that mental health has really come to sort of the forefront, and people are talking about mental health, and also there's a lot more empathy, a lot more understanding, I think, towards mental health and mental disorder. I don't think that's enough. I would really like to see that people in the workplace, organizations bring work on their policies, implement those policies, and really sort of action all this that we've been talking about.
Well, yes, Rachel, you've done very well. I mean, it's not an easy question to you, but probably the most loaded one of the five. And as we know, yesterday we saw a proud head of health security, health superintendent, receiving her 8-pointed cross. Would you suggest that all the frontliners deserve an 8-pointed cross?
Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you very much. So the next, but last but not least, we got Robin Pratt. She is a founder at Impact Consulting. And your microphone is muted. No, you're alive now.
Yes, you're right.
So tell us a bit, now that you heard, of course you are enriched by the wisdom from the 10 other panelists, the first session and the second session. What are your views about the self-employed? These are the ones who they cry alone and cry in the corner. And they are the ones who take a lot of risks to employ people. It's usually the SMEs. Malta is made up of 90% of SMEs, and quite a few of them are also run by self-employed and people employing maybe under 5 or under 10. What is your opinion about did they get the help they deserve? Most of them don't get a wage supplement, for example.
Yes, no, I understand, George. I think to wrap up what a lot of people have been talking about is that, well, first of all, these self-employed people are no different to, they're human beings that are going through what many others are suffering, which many of the other panelists have already spoken about. But like myself, who is a hospitality consultant, very reliant on the hospitality industry, like Derek was saying, anyone connected with that industry that is not necessarily eligible for any type of grant, then they are trying to keep afloat without any form of subsidy in the same way. So, and being self-sufficient, they're working at home, they're working by themselves, to what Sasha and others were talking about, that this loneliness and perhaps at times this sense of grief for losing, sitting there and watching the business go away. In some cases, we know that restaurants have had to close down. These are many times self-employed people, the same as consultancy in the industry across the globe. I work with industries across the globe in the hospitality industry, and consultancies have had to close the doors due to not being able to sustain their work. I'm a mindset coach as well as a hospitality consultant. So what a lot of the speakers have been talking about with regards to, and I really related to what Matthew was saying, that it is about mindset. And as a generation, we have to accept that what was normal before is not anywhere. Our normal is changing every day. And the only thing that we can do somehow or other is to reflect on how we can be the best we can be in dealing with that new normal. And that means doing things to help ourselves and to support others in being the best we can be with regards to mindset. And I think, organizations like Working Town who are organizing these types of discussions, which were never, when I first started talking about mindset coaching, people were looking at me a little bit strangely, like, why do we need to focus on our mindset? It's all we have to be able to really combat a lot of these issues that we're facing right now as individuals. So I think with regards to self-employed organizations and these SMEs, then just like everyone else, that we need to, as Yasmin said, we've got to put ourselves outside the comfort zone. We've got to do things to energize both ourselves and our teams, and find other ways perhaps that we can add value to the organizations that we're working with. But definitely, I would say that, it's been and continues to be, we're on this roller coaster, and we think that we're going to get off it, and then it comes back on. So, it's really, I would say to anyone that's in a situation of being self-employed, that it's important as well to feel that you can reach out and that you're not Robinson Crusoe, and there's so many more people in this situation where we're really striving to do the best we can, but we're reliant on industries that are flailing, and we're not eligible for those grants. So it does make it equally difficult.
Robin, I just have a reflection on my mind from a macro level. You look very young to me compared to me, but I remember days in this tiny rock here where we had a flourishing textile sector. This used to employ thousands and thousands, and some of the workers need not be scientists, and some of them with little amount of dexterity. They used to provide jeans to Germany, to Italy, and other places. Within 10 years, this industry disappeared. There is not even 1 or 2 factories in Malta. This pandemic has also, to some extent, made us learn some of our mistakes of overcrowding in the hotel business. In the level of the cheaper the better, the more volume we get. We were in 2019, before the pandemic arrived and came knocking on our doors, we were welcoming 3 million tourists, okay, and another 1 million cruise liner visitors. Would you think, in your opinion, that the pandemic, at least, apart from devastation, that economic devastation that has left, but at least may show us the way, that the way forward, our new normal will not be another 4 million tourists, but perhaps something smaller but of better quality.
But more manageable. Yes, I think
more
that,
manageable. Yes, ecologically wise, which, whatever, you know. So the positive aspect of the pandemic, if you can call the silver lining, is that it showed us the way that the problems we had with congestions and cars going to the beach, you have to go at 6 o'clock in the morning because there is no space for anybody, you know, on the beach. What are your views again? This would be the conclusion aspect, because I think we are, Mark will probably pull our ears in a different way that the
we are running a bit late. I have one question.
We're running late, yes.
I have one
so
question.
Just your comments.
I have one question from the audience, which I'll make later, but please, let's wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, so
What
just
would
very
be
quickly,
our
yes, I
new
think
norm?
learning is very important, and I think it's that we. Yes, Mark, let's ask the question.
No, please conclude, and then I'll ask the question myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I was just going to say that I think that, yes, this industry and many others, there's been learnings that I think we definitely need to heed. Perhaps it's difficult to continue on with that learning when we're faced with so many challenges. But I think for Malta, if we can focus on a more quality-related industry, particularly when we have so many people leaving the industry with regards to employment, would be very, very advantageous.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone very much for that. I appreciate you closing more or less on time. We do have some questions from the audience. I want to at least put one across. It's for Derek, from Eric Barber. Derek, you have a massively stressful job, even if it's not what we consider a standard workplace. Have you identified any strategies for yourself over the years, how to deal with being on the roads, ups and downs of digging, etc.? I think this might be useful, I think, for anyone, even in normal jobs, if you have any coping mechanism that you can share with us.
I've had to relearn a lot in the last 20 months. The one thing that kept me sane was gardening, and it became really important to me to go out and to do small things, to put seed in the ground, to nurture it, to grow it. I mean, the metaphor is there, open, right? But doing those kind of things, and I just changed the rhythm of my life from a tango to a waltz, right? And changing the beat of my life was so important. And looking at things, taking longer and examining things, and not just chewing through things, and it just changed me. It was the speed and the beat. And I think that's been the secret, is just taking time now and not feeling the need to go at gear number 6 all the time. And that really helped me, you know. And as I said, gardening and little bits of DIY and enjoying the time rather than rushing through life. But that's been important to me, very important.
Thank you so much. I think that's echoes of even what Jane was telling us before about time and pace. So thank you so much to everyone. I'm just going to share my screen for one last time to remind everyone that in April, we hopefully will finally be organizing our conference, the one which was meant to be held today. We were all meant to be in the same room together, talking about these issues in more detail. Some of you were even going to give presentations and keynote speeches. Thank you for being available still to have this this alternative event, which has kept us talking about this really important topic. So our website is mentalwellnessconference.eu if you want more information about the conference. Thank you once again to all of you, George, Robin, Derek, Sasha, Catherine, Matthew, the panelists and speakers we had on the other panel. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to close this with, actually, thank you, Derek, for giving us permission to play one of your songs in our closing. I'm going to play Garden of Remembrance from your latest album. And I hope everyone enjoys this. And I definitely recommend that people pick the album up. Are they still in time for your to book your broadcast on Friday? Was
Yeah, I think it finishes today. Yeah, that's where we've come to, global broadcast and Zoom gigs.
So if you go to fishmusic.scot, you can buy a ticket for Fish's global broadcast the day after tomorrow. I think today is the closing date, so definitely pick that up. Thank you everyone for joining, and I leave you with Garden of Remembrance.
Thanks everybody. I'll see you in Malta. Take care.
See you in April.
Yeah. Bye guys.
Tries to recognize the source and place the name. A face so familiar, the smile soft and warm, the memory evades him, his mind wanders on, down rabbit holes, a darkened maze, a place to hide and be alone, where thoughts land like snowflakes in the palm of his hand, swift melting moments, his tears a surprise. He tries to remember just what made him cry, with the beautiful stranger who is holding his hand. He's lost between the here and now, somewhere that he can't be found. She's still here, a lover, ghost of memory. She'll wait for an eternity. He's still here. The empty room, moth-eaten curtains, drunken drapes hold back the light, but for solitary sunbeams on dull chandeliers, colorless butterflies, the fate now revealed in silken webs, forever held within the sails of yellow shrouds that gather dust above the dance hall floor. The silent space, she stands alone, and in her heart she hears the sound, the sweet lift of music that drew them so close, that first danced together with the world at their feet. Not so long ago, he's lost between the here and now, somewhere that he can't be found. She's still here, a lover, ghost of memory. She'll wait for an eternity. He's still here. They work the soil, they sow the seed, they're side by side upon the earth, growing together, now forever apart, with a love so embracing, held in their hearts, but nothing between them, no memory shared, no recognition. in his soft pale green eyes. He's lost between the here and now, somewhere that he can't be found. She's still here, her love a ghost of memory. She'll wait for an eternity. He's still here. He's lost between the here and now, somewhere that he can't be found. She's still here, her love a ghost of memory. She'll wait for an eternity.